Okay, in this video, let's look at the second pattern for handling instantiation of modules and inheritance of modules. In the last video, we looked at the classical pattern for inheritance and instantiation. And in this one, we're going to look at the newer pattern, which is prototypal. Some people actually say prototypal and they mean classical because they've not yet learned of this newer one. I say newer. It's been used for about the last 3 to 5 years. There's a few advantages. There's not as many advantages as some people may say. You still encounter classical inheritance a lot. You see it used a lot just because it was the way things were done for a long time. But I personally think this is the better pattern. So let's go ahead and look at prototypal inheritance. So in the last example, you would create a constructor function and you'd instantiate it with new. So you'd go function person, and then you create a new person, var will equals new person. Okay, so that's classical inheritance. And there's a video on that. I'll put it in the description if you missed it. And so prototypal inheritance does all the same things in a different way. So let's go ahead and now let's create, we'll go human, then we'll do musician, and then we'll create people. So in this case, you simply make objects. Human equals boom, and you make an object. And then you use Object.create to create a new type of thing. So you can make a musician equals Object.create human. And so what that's going to do is that's going to make a new object that inherits all of the properties of human. And so let's go ahead and fill in a few of these. So let's say this has a species, and that's human. Human. And then we've got, let's say species. And this will console log this.species. So you still use the this keyword when you're referencing values that are on the object. And let's also do say name. There we go. So if it has a name, you can say the name. So now we've created a musician. And so adding new properties or adding new methods is pretty simple. You just simply do musician dot, and then you add onto it. So musician dot, let's say play instrument. This will be a function. That's console logs plays plus your instrument. There we go. And so now to actually create a musician, we simply do what we've done before with Object.create. Var will equals Object.create, and we're going to create a musician. And then will can have a name, and will can have an instrument. Let's play drums today. I'm not very good at drums. And now I have all the methods from the human, and I have all the methods from the musician because the musician inherited from the human. So I can do things like will.saySpecies. Tell you what, let's actually pull this into the console at this point. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. There we go. So I've pasted it all in. So now let's go ahead and look at just the will object. See, here's my will object, and I've added 2 values to it. And then I can also see my prototype. This is the musician object. I can play an instrument. And then that prototype, I can say name, say species, and I have a species. So will.species is human. Will.saySpecies works. And then will.play instrument all the way up to my level works. So then if I were to go human.species, let's say we change that. So then will.saySpecies, it's inherited. I now say Homo sapiens. I didn't change anything about will. I changed something about human, and it's inherited down because it's all prototypal. So that's basically what prototypal inheritance looks like. It's a lot simpler. I think it's a lot cleaner for newer JavaScript developers because they don't have to worry about actually working with the prototype objects. I know newer developers tend to have a simpler time grasping how inheritance works with this because it just looks like code. We're going to create a musician object from human, and then we're going to add some methods to it. It's very straightforward and simple. Now, if you don't like having to add all of these here, which I don't like having to do, a lot of people will add a create method here. And so there's a create function, and then you can give it name. say human can create. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create an instance right in here. We're going to create this right there. And then we're going to go instance.name equals name. And then we're going to return that instance. And then make sure I add my comma there. So this would basically, I'll go ahead and get rid of the inheritance for now. Now var_will would do human.create. And then I'll just say will. So let's pull this in my console here. There you go. So now let's look at will. I have a name of will, and then I have all those same methods, and I can go var Bob equals human.create Bob. So now Bob's another guy with his own name. So that also works. And if you want to make this even cooler, you can actually just allow any object here. So I could call this values. So I pass in an object of values, any amount of values, and then I'm going to get all the keys out. What that does is here, if you do Object.keys on any object, A1, B2, then it's just going to give me the list of keys. So I'm going to say, okay, what are all the values that got passed in? I'm going to for each those, and then key. So I'm going to go through each key, and then I'm going to assign the value of that key to my instance. So no matter how many values I give it, I just give it an object, and no matter what I give it, it's going to assign that. So instance.key equals values key. So I'm basically just taking all these values, putting them all on. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow me to always have a create method. Let me go ahead and copy this. So now all my children will have this create method. So I'm going to create that human, and that human has this create method up top. So now I can go var musician equals human.create. And then I can just give this all my stuff right here. Musician's going to, let's say, type of musician. Actually, musicians think they're their own species. And then function, not function, play instrument. I'll just say plays. There we go. So now I've created a musician type. Musician's got his own species. He's got a method on there, and then he's got all that other stuff. So now I can do musician.create to create will, because I'm inheriting that create method all the way up there from human, and that create method will automatically apply anything that I add in now. So I can go name is will, instrument. Let's play guitar. I'm actually pretty good at guitar. So now will can go play instrument. That's going to play guitar. Whoops, forgot my space there. Will.say name. Will.say species. And again, let's look at that will object. So I've got the will object, who doesn't really have any methods. And then I've got the musician object that can play instrument and also has his own species. And then I also have that. So if I were to do will.say species, it's going to be a musician because species here overrides species there. So that's prototypal inheritance for you. Basically, you just use Object.create. And then if you want to extend this a little bit more, then you add a create method onto one of your root objects at the very, very top level. And then every other object can use create to continue creating their own objects. The one caveat to it is Object.create is only IE8 and newer. So if you support really, really, really old browsers, you're not going to want to do that. So that's prototypal inheritance. Again, it's a lot of fun. It's really easy, and enjoy.